Well, after all of the insane media over Masters of the Universe Revelation, we got our second He-Man series. And, we got it about a week ago. I held off making this because I didn't want to rush it. I actually watched it through a couple of times, just like I did with Revelation. And I will say this, it was actually significantly better. And I'm not saying this lightly, and I'm not saying this as like, oh, it's okay to make changes here, but it's not okay to make changes there. Although that is actually completely valid. It is totally okay to be okay with some changes and not okay with other changes, because we all have our preferences and tastes in storytelling. Storytelling is an extremely subjective, individual thing. But what we need to talk about with this new He-Man is really in the context of what happened with Revelation. So, because as a series, it's a kid's series, it's done with kind of cheap and cheesy CGI that, it was cute and fun, but it was still fairly cheap looking. What we need to understand is that with Revelation, there was a media campaign that started off with, this is a love letter to the fans, this is for the old fans, and then over time we kept on getting, well, it's not exactly, and so we're changing things and blah, 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 right? And what happened is not just Kevin Smith, but the production itself basically lied about what Revelation was. And being told we're getting a continuation of the old series and getting anything but that, and getting the adult version of it done in a way that just felt cynical and not actually adult. Never mind having zero respect for the lore that came before it, was very, very aggravating, right? You put it in the context of nostalgia and established lore, and you kind of shit on that, well, you're not going to have a good time. But this new series really did not promise anything. In fact, there was basically no media campaign whatsoever. And the little bit that we did get was basically, here's one for the old fans, here's one for the kids today. And we know that. We know that it is marketed for the current generations of 8-year-olds, which is fine, right? And if I was an 8-year-old, I would absolutely love it. But I also don't believe it necessarily has the sticking power that the original did. I don't think it's going to have the nostalgia factor. But then we live in a world of such insane media abundance right now anyway, that I don't think anything is going to have much of a nostalgia factor, simply for the fact that a lot of these stories really just are not being carefully crafted. They're just being kind of pumped out in a perfunctory way. Paint by numbers, get the production out, make some money, move on to the next thing. That's exactly the business model that's going on right now, is just take a formula, paint it with different colors, move on, do the next one. It's an assembly line process now. So political agendas aside and everything, really what we're getting down to is this is just kind of assembly line manufacturing. It's like the Walmart of entertainment. We're just trying to, buy for the cheapest absolute dollar and push it through. And it's not to say that making these things are cheaper than they used to be. They're not. It's more the fact that they are spending their money on the gloss and the finish of the product. They're not actually spending it on the substance of the product. They're making things look better without making things operate and feel and run better. And that's problematic in its own way. But all that aside, right, the new series, it's a reboot from the ground up. It does not pretend it is linked to the old stories in any way, shape, or form. And let's be honest, right? He-Man has been anything but consistent. From the mini comics to Filmation, to New Adventures, to Mike Young Productions, to the '87 movie, to the current She-Ra and Master of the Universe iterations that have hit Netflix. None of them have been consistent with each other, right? And the comic books haven't been consistent with that. And I loved the comic books. I understand the complaints about Rob David. I do. He doesn't seem to respect the lore. He seems to want to do something else with the lore. But I don't... There's pluses and minuses in all of that. There are things in every iteration that I like and things in every iteration that I really don't like. So the fact is that none of it is perfect. And that's okay, because a lot of it really does need to come down to, as a whole, does it get a pass, right? Because you could sit there and checklist things and go, yes, it gets a pass, no, it doesn't get a pass, right? One of the notable things about the new series that I don't necessarily mind, but a lot of people seem to be having trouble with, is the idea that now He-Man is no longer really just, He-Man, the holder of the power of Castle Grayskull. Like, the power of Castle Grayskull is no longer this like sacred relic that needs a champion. Now it is a more general power that everybody can have, and it's divided amongst many people. And so now, instead of having He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, it's more like everybody is special, right? It's kind of taking the He-Man model and turning it into the Power Rangers model. Except, even with the Power Rangers, it was pretty specific, and you needed people of certain qualities to be chosen. And in this, they flagrantly said the power is completely not discriminatory. It just, you take the power and you get it, and it can be wielded however. Like, oh wow, that's interesting. So there's problems, right? There are definitely problems. But the fact is that it's enjoyable. It's popcorn. It's not a legacy show by any stretch of the imagination. It's not something that kids are going to be rushing home from school to sit and watch after school every day like the original He-Man was. Of course, that doesn't happen anymore anyway. So at this point, it's just kind of another thing that's out there. And that's it, right? It's literally just another tchotchke on the shelf, and is going to be pretty much indistinguishable from any other unless you really sit down and take a look and bond with something. And Hollywood is trying their best to make sure that nobody bonds with anything. So, they've really kind of wrecked the entire idea of storytelling now, and it's crap. So I don't know. The new series, it's all right. It's not bad. It's enjoyable. It didn't make any promises on the forefront. They completely changed the lore, disregarded the lore, rewrote the lore. So it's its own thing. It's really just He-Man in name only. But the fact is that it's hard to be as mad because they didn't make any promises. And that's the reason that I'm even making this video, is the juxtaposition of one made promises and not only didn't deliver, but really delivered in the reverse direction. The other one made zero promises, and it was enjoyable, even if there are some things to quibble about. So, take it or leave it, whatever, and I'll talk to you guys later. Good journey.
Chocolate-covered laser discs, flashing like a dagger in the night.